Welcome to the Three Amigos. This is the time and place where readers and writers will experience tried and tested methods and means for creating engaging, unique literature for today's readers. Author Mastermind members Marianne Pohl, Valerie Winans, and Steve Levi, along with invited guests, will discuss and share how to write works destined for coming out of the box and onto the bestseller list. Unique literature for let's meet the Three Amigos, award-winning authors Marianne Pohl, Valerie Winans, and Steve Levi. Winans and share how to test literature. Let's meet the Three Amigos, award-winning authors Marianne Pohl, Valerie Winans, and Steve Levi. Winans and share how to test. Hey, I know we're live now. I'm Steve Levi, one of the Three Amigos, and we have guests all today here from Author Masterminds. For those of you that are interested, we are specifically here. I'm Steve Levi, one of the Three Amigos. Okay, are we okay now? I'm Steve Levi, one of the Three Amigos, and we are with some of the writers from Author Masterminds, and we are specifically here to help you become a better writer. We're here to give you ideas, concepts, methods of travel forward. We have people here who do horror. We have people here who do history, dogs, dystopia, and fishing in Alaska. And so the important thing here is for you to learn something from us, and we will introduce ourselves, and then we'll go back and each of us will give you some ideas on how to build a character. And now to another Three Amigo, Marianne, take it away.
Thanks, Steve. I'm Marianne Paul, America's Lady of Supernatural Thrillers. I really enjoyed these Three Amigo meetings. I'm excited to do this one today. I think creating believable characters is a really fun topic. And I think everyone that's here with us, which we have several, can give some great ideas on how to do that so that your readers are really interacting with your characters. You know, fiction is fiction, but if you don't, and most time fiction is really based around characters. That's one of the things I've learned. And so if your characters aren't wonderful to your reader, then neither is your book. So that is, I didn't come up with that. I actually read that and thought I agreed with that. So anyway, now it's to Valerie.
Thank you, Marianne. I'm Valerie Winans, and I am a writer for readers of all ages. And I think that it's important maybe for our listeners to know that we by no means mean for this to be a comprehensive study of how to develop believable characters. People have written whole, books on the subject, but what we will give you is what has worked for us. We're just going to share with you what we know and hope that it works for you. And with that, to a writer that develops fantastic characters, Sil.
Well, thank you for that, Valerie. And I want to thank the Three Amigos for inviting me here today. I'm Sil Gregoire. I'm Alaska Sci-Fi Queen. And characters are the most important part of the story. And that was especially true in writing my newest novel that will be out soon, because my first series was all written in third person. And this new book is written in first person. And what I've learned about characters by doing that, it's been such a learning experience, because by writing in first person, the character gets to react to everything that's said and done in the character's mind, and the reader gets to read that. And that just doesn't happen on the same intensity when you write in third person. And therefore, I think I have a great array of characters in Crystal Shards that'll be out soon. I would like for Mary Flint, who's also a great sci-fi writer, to elaborate on that. Mary?
Thank you, Sil. I'm Mary Flint, creator of Breathtaking Worlds and Heart Racing Adventures. I'm also the author of the Red Star trilogy. First 2 books are out, working on the 3rd one. But like Sil was mentioning, I write in first person all the time. And something that I think is interesting that my readers have told me is that because I have 2 characters that are from first person, and they tell me that they both talk differently, even though I'm the one, I know it's one person writing it, but and even though they're both in first person, they talk differently than each other. So it's kind of fun hearing feedback about that. Because I mean, it's working, whatever I'm doing. And I like how Adam Freestone writes his characters. So why don't you introduce yourself, Adam?
You're up, Adam.
Hi, I'm Adam Freestone, Alaska's master of imagination, and I write in third person, which an interesting thing about my book is I originally had it set up in first person, but it didn't quite fit my style. But one thing I will say that if you make the mistake of having to, and you have to switch your stuff from first person to third person, don't make that mistake, because that's extremely irritating to go through and have to change all your pronouns to the correct tense. But on my characters, my stories are set in a fantasy setting, but all my characters are based in fact, and I try to make a character that if let's say you encounter something you've never seen before, I always think, well, how would I react to something strange like that? And then I kind of try to base my writing style for my characters around basically a realistic reaction and something that seems believable. And I try to make characters that, and my characters are also based a little bit in my experiences with my disability, but in kind of an entertaining way that I hope would be interesting to teenagers and young adults. And I'll pass it off to Evan.
I'm Evan Swenson, and I'm a writer and a publisher. Steve mentioned fishing, and so I'll talk about writing, or as opposed to publishing. My book is One Last Cast, and it's from my radio show of Alaska Outdoors. They were writing the show each day with there's just time for one last cast, and the book is 120 of the best of those last casts. And I see that Fran arrived, so maybe we should have Fran say hello, and then she could take it back to Steve.
I'm Fran Lindhaug, and I write award-winning books. My first 4 were horse books that did not require a lot as far as personalities being involved in them, because they were more like reference books. But my last book, Genesis, which was also an award-winning book, I had to deal with romance. For an old lady like me to go back and deal with romance and have write about feelings that people have for each other, particularly in marital situations, was new for me, but apparently I pulled it off pretty good. And I had a lot of reader comments saying that they related a lot, mostly to Eve. So that was an experience for me, but I don't know. I'll hand it back to Steve.
Back to me. I got an email from a listener, shocking though it is. And what she said was, can you give a specific example? Because I use history. specific example in history so that I can know what it is that I'm supposed to be doing or could be doing. Okay, here you go. Take you on a little trip back. We're going to go to 1848 in California. I used to be a California historian. And if you read your history books, you will know that gold was first discovered in Coloma, California by John Marshall. And that's what the history books say, which is bogus. Because what happens is John Marshall found something that he thought was gold, and he took it and he was going to dump it. And the cook that was there was a woman who had come from North Carolina. North Carolina had the first gold rush in American history, by the way, and she had grown up in the gold country. And she said, "No, that is gold. That is not gold. That is not pyrite." "Yeah, right. What's a woman know about gold? Ha ha ha." And she said, "Well, here, I'll show you." So this woman, Jenny Wimmer, just so you want it so that you can follow through on this, took the gold that they thought was pyrite, and she dropped it into some boiling lye that they were using to make soap. And if you drop gold into lye and you heat it up and you pull it out, it's still gold. And they pulled it out and it was gold. And John Marshall says, "It's gold. We've got a gold rush." So John Marshall gets all of the credit for the gold rush. And you talk about Jenny Wimmer, and no one says anything. Okay, here's how you start. When you got a name, women are good. Women are the best things that you can do, is because women do all kinds of, before 1960, women did all kinds of things and got no credit for them. By 1960, they are getting credit. So what I did is I went to Jenny Wimmer and I punched her up on the internet and I got an obituary, and the obituary is in San Diego. Now I've got a name and I've got a name and I know where she is. Now I start going. State of California has an archive. They have, it's indexed. To look her up there. Stay in San Diego has historical societies, and most of those are indexed. Look them up. You look up her, you look up the bio on her, and they say that the piece of gold that they found is at the it's at the museum at UC Berkeley. Call UC Berkeley. If you are doing some historical work and the person died after 1920, they may have an FBI file and they may have a federal file. If they have a federal file, listen to me carefully now. What you do is you file a FOIA, F-O-I-A, Freedom of Information Act. It's free. So what you do is you just have to prove that the person is dead. So what you do is you get some kind of an information, an obituary, something in the newspaper that say Joe Smith died. You copy it, you send it to the FBI and say, under FOIA, I want the federal documents on this person. You never know what you're going to find. That's the thing about history. You do not know what you're going to find. And the last thing I want to say is the single most important thing is when you start talking to the archives, talk to the archivists, because they all have fantastic stories about documents that they have, and they're not writers. But they're walking around saying, you know, someday somebody ought to know about this person because this is a very strange person. And if they tell you, you're the only person that's got that information. So now you can take it from me. That's where you start looking for historical characters. Now for strange characters on the edge, talk to Mary Ann.
You're really funny, Steve. Thanks. Well, actually, my strange characters I do start in a logical manner. I don't know about third person is what I write in, but I tried first person and it didn't work for me. So I went to third person. Anyway, after that, when I'm building a believable character, when I built Kat, who is my protagonist, I literally went and I gave her a background, her age, where she was born, what does she like to do? What did she do as a kid? Where are her parents? I literally wrote all this up and built a person. Now that hasn't always come out. Not all of this will ever come out in my books. But what it did was it gave me the ability to know that character and know what she was going to do in certain situations. So when I had an occurrence in my second or third book where she did something and my gut was going, something's really wrong here. I realized this is not her. That is not how she would act. And I rewrote the scene. Now I had learned this a long time ago, to build your characters as if they're a person. You know, what do they hate the most about themselves? That kind of a thing. Anything that will give my readers the ability to connect with my characters is as much information as I can give on that. And when she doesn't like her hair because it sticks up everywhere, I think a lot of us can understand that. And that's one of her pet peeves about herself. So yeah, I could go on and on, but that gives you an idea of what to do to start building your protagonists. Now, we won't go into the bad guys because we want Steve to sleep tonight. But anyway.
But yeah, well, I did a similar thing with my characters. Like, I've got all this background information on my characters. I've got like pages and pages of stuff that will never come out in my books. And yeah, just trying to go with like, okay, this is basically what the person goes through, what they like, and I look at a scene and be like, okay, so this is what they're up against. How would they solve the problem, or what would what would the first thing they do? What would that be? So that's what works for me.
And Valerie, thank you, Adam.
Thank you. The tip that I have is kind of what I use. And I think we all here are readers. I'm a reader first and foremost. And so we often can get ideas, hints, or we can even plagiarize if we want to, characters from writers that we admire. And when I was thinking about this, I thought about Jane Eyre, one of my favorite books ever. And she is kind of a goody two shoes, a character. She's an orphan and she's just this sweet girl. Well, the whole book puts her in the middle of all of these dysfunctional, mean, horrible. She falls in love with Mr. Rochester, who fails to tell her that he has a crazy wife in the attic. I mean, the whole thing. So she can not have a lot of character other than being sweet and kind, but then the antagonism and the challenge and all of that makes it such a great, unforgettable novel comes from all those other characters around her. So I think you can look, Mr. Bloom in Ulysses, he was quite a character. Oh, he did some things. So you can look at writers that you really think a lot about and take a page from their book. What do you think? Sil?
I'll tell you what I think. I think Marianne, Valerie, and Adam and Mary have given such wonderful information about character development. One important thing you have to remember is you're not just creating a bunch of characters to fill a book. And I always make sure that I have written down as part of my plot of the story is what is the purpose of this character? There's got to be a reason for that character to be involved in this story. And some of them have more important involvement than others, but even if it's a small role, it's still important. And I was amused by Mary Flint's comment that she had two voices that are going on in her story and that the reader hears two voices, and that's wonderful. I have 6 voices going on in Crystal Shards. The plot is very complex and it occurs in different areas. So I had to have a character in each aspect of the plot to tell the story. So that's why I ended up with that many characters. But it worked. And the funny part is when I am writing the conversation that these characters are having, as well as the thoughts that are going through their head, I have a different voice for each one. I hear a different voice. It's not all the same. Each one is so different. And that is part of the beauty of writing in first person, I think. Mary, you want to add to that?
I also hear my characters' voices when I write them. And I've also had kind of like what Marianne was talking about. I've had places where, once I get to know the character enough, if I try and change something, well, it's like the character stops talking to me until I fix it. Like I'm working on a prequel for my trilogy right now, and I was like, well, I'm not sure if I really want to go this direction, this one character, so maybe I'll do this instead. And nothing came. Finally, I was like, all right, I'll try it, and boom, all the information came. I think one of the hardest things for me when I was creating characters was they say your characters have to be flawed in order to be realistic. And I loved my characters. I didn't want them to be flawed at first. And it was kind of hard for me to think, well, what would their flaws be? And I heard somebody on TikTok, I don't remember their username, but they said your character's flaws relate to your character's hurt. So an example would be, my two main characters, one had a very stable family life growing up and the other didn't. So Andresha she's very hard to earn her trust. She's very wary. She's very anxious. So her flaw is that she doesn't trust easily. She's sometimes rash. She doesn't, volunteer information probably as readily as she should. Whereas Edric's flaw is, he's almost too trusting. He wants to help everybody regardless of who they are, where they came from. So that's something I feel really helped me pick out what my character's flaws would be. Because then, I knew their strengths and their stories very well, but their flaws are hard sometimes. What do you think, Adam?
Yeah, I can kind of speak to that. Trying to get like the correct tone of your character when you're writing like a conversation. That's, in some ways that's the easiest thing to do, but in some ways that's like the hardest thing to do in like writing, because I'll write something, go, no, that's not quite the correct tone, and then I'll think I'll get the correct tone, and then I'll write like a couple. I'll write like a page or two, and then realize that the beginning point of the conversation was wrong, so I have to change something which changes the entire conversation. But yeah, one of the flaws with one of my characters is that basically, because of what my main character, Hierarch of my story, has gone through, because basically just give a quick snapshot, it's just been kind of a hard situation where people have been mean to him a lot. And so it's basically, he's extremely distrustful of people. And yeah, so it's hard to get his trust. Once someone gains his trust, it's very hard for him to lose their trust. So yeah, that's in some ways that makes your whole story is just striking the correct tone.
The characters do talk back to us, as Mary and Adam said, and sometimes they force you to change the plot because they know better than we do.
I did something a little bit different with my Genesis book, but apparently it turned out okay. Each chapter was in a different personality from their point of view, and the whole chapter was about that one character. I really appreciate what Steve had to say, because I identify with it, because I had the facts of what my characters were. They are historical facts. Adam and Eve were real people. God is real. And so we know what they did in the situation that they were in. Because of their actions, we know, but we don't know what they felt and why they did what they did. So I had to put myself in their place. What would they be thinking? You know, why did they do what they did? And the hardest thing of all really was, what was God thinking? And so a lot of people read about God, but they don't really know what he was thinking or what he probably would have said. And so that was a real challenge. At one point, I had to stop and say, would God actually do this? Would God actually cry? I just had to go back to the Bible. Does God actually cry? And that was a real challenge for me, to pull it off and still make him look like an omnipotent person, a mighty person, and yet have the reader relate to him through his emotions. So having the facts and knowing their actions just starts the ball rolling. And then after that, it's like filling in the spaces. Why, how could they possibly have done what they done? What were they thinking? What were they feeling at that time? Anyway, somebody else say something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Evan, you're up.
I enjoyed what Mary Ann said about being true to your character. I had an author submit a manuscript, and it had some scenes in it that we couldn't publish. They were sexual content matters, and we couldn't publish it. But I asked her, rather than say anything about that, I asked her how well she knew her character. And she told me, I know that character very well. And I said, well, tell me about her. Write me up a paper and tell me everything you know about her. I want to know where she was born, how what her family was like, where she was raised. I want to know everything about her. And so she wrote me a really detailed description of everything about this character of hers, from her young life in grade school right on up to an adult. And so after I'd read that, I said, would your character really do this? And she said, no, she wouldn't. And I said, well, why is she in your book? And she says, well, they tell me that you have to have sex in the book to sell a book.
Yeah, right.
And I said, well, maybe you do, and maybe that's what sells, but we can't publish it, and you should be true to your character. She says, you're right, I'll take that out. So she did, she rewrote it, had the romance there, which was fun. But when the book came out, she said she got a letter from her father. And her father said, I really liked your book. And I especially liked it because it didn't have all that sex stuff in it. And she said, then I realized, had I left that in there, I couldn't even have sent the book to my father. I couldn't let him. So I thought that was interesting. So her reader of one, her father, she had to be true to her character, just so her dad would read it.
I have a quick question here. That was really good, Evan. I'm sorry. I've been trying to do this.
You're frozen, Mary Ann. Mary Ann is frozen. Well, the most important things when you're a writer is to be true to your character. What'll happen is, as you begin writing, your characters will take over the story. So for those of you that are beginning writers, you say, oh, I want to, I'll just go ahead and start writing and then things will take off. No, what you do is you have to develop your character first. And then you're going to find yourself typing as fast as you possibly can to keep up with what those characters are doing. And they will end up doing things that you never thought about in the first place. And in my particular, I'm very different than everybody else here, is because I go to history first. And so what happens is I find stuff in history that I had never ever heard about, that I can incorporate. And it makes it very nice because all of a sudden the character will come up with something that I didn't even know until I had done the research. And Mary Ann is back. You're muted.
I'm so sorry, guys. That's the second time my internet, shame on it, has frozen on us. Rebecca asked a question, Steve, for you. Does the FOIA have to be about the past before 1920? So does it have to be before
No.
1920? No.
Anything that's a federal document that has your name on it, whether it was 2 days ago or whether it was, the reason I say 1916 is because they started this in the First World War. So if somebody dies today, you get the copy, you get a copy of the death certificate, not the death certificate, but you get the obituary out of the newspaper, for instance. Okay, and then what you do is, because you've got to prove that they're dead, because if they're alive, they will not going to give you anything. So what you do is you say, Freedom of, I'm requesting documents, federal documents under the Freedom of Information. Make sure you say that, FOIA, and send it to the FBI with the proof of their death. And if there are any, it could be, maybe they were considered for a federal position and they called a bunch of people and asked about it. They could have been arrested when they were 12 years old, not 12, it can't be 12 because that's before 18. But if they are arrested at 18 and the feds know about it, then that will be in the file too. You never know what you're going to find. And believe me, all of these important people who are important at 50 and 60, you would be surprised what they were doing at 25 and 30.
A kind of a joke to add to what Evan was saying is, like, when you avoid footers, I couldn't put that stuff in my book because I can't write a book that I can't read.
Oh, and one other thing to add is that every state and every municipality also has a document, a public document section. And you can request documents from the local police, the local state troopers, the municipality, the city. Just take a look, it's always online, and they'll say, if you want documents, if you want public documents, here's who you request. Sometimes they charge you $25 to research, but over the years that I've been doing it, I've only been charged like once or twice. And when I got it, it was like monumental file. Don't neglect history. If you're looking for something that's unique, go to history first. And then, you know, like Mary Ann, Mary Flint, Russell, then you can go ahead and do what you want, but start with history.
Adam, thanks for that comment. I had not thought of it in that terms. I've always thought of it in the terms that I wouldn't write something that my grandmother wouldn't read.
Mhm.
But now I'm the grandfather, so maybe I should start making it more personal, Adam.
Mhm.
Well, I think we're about ready to wrap it up, huh, guys?
Okay, I'll wrap it up. This, if you, whether you're a reader or a writer, this is the most important time in American history. And that is because until about 15 years ago, the books on the market were those that were published by the big publishers, and they didn't publish good books. They published books they thought they would sell. And what has happened now with the internet is anyone can write a book, and a lot of people are doing it. But now you can find almost anything that you want on the internet, and particularly on places like Amazon and of course author masterminds. You know, so what happens is if you're looking for very, very different, very unique items, I'd start with author masterminds. But anybody that is out there writing, I'm telling you right now, this is the greatest time to be a writer because you can write anything you want, get it published, and you can see if you can sell. And you don't have to be locked into what the major publishers say, well, this sells, because it isn't selling that well for them. Take a look at Amazon. Amazon is having problems now. They're closing bookstores, you know, so this is your time. This is your moment. If you're a writer and a reader, please go to Author Masterminds first. And thank you very much. We will see you next month when the subject is, Mary Ann. When you're on mute, Mary Ann.
How do you know when the novel is done? How do you know when your paper is done? How do you know when your story is complete?
Right.
How's that?
That'll work. And we will see you in 4 weeks, same time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here today. The Three Amigos trust that you've learned something helpful to bring your works out of the box and onto the bestseller list. Join the Three Amigos next month at the same time on the third Tuesday of the month and in the same place. We will give you more real-world tips so your writing will leap out of the box and onto the bestseller list. Okay,